Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily.
We have been failed.
Simone Biles and fellow Olympians call out the FBI for botching the Larry Nassar investigation.
It was like serving innocent children up to a pedophile on a silver platter.
Plus, a shocking revelation months after a double homicide.
So he arranged to have this guy shoot him.
How a prominent South Carolina attorney ended up in a murder-for-hire scheme. And a father's murder sentence revealed. After the brutal killing of a boy with autism, how long Joseph Daniels will be put away in the death of baby Joe. Plus, a monumental conviction overturned. What a Minnesota Supreme Court ruling could mean for ex-officer Derek Chauvin. Law and Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmeyer along with Terry Austin. We begin with a scathing hearing on the FBI's handling of the Larry Nassar investigation and the incredible testimony from the young women he's accused of abusing. Olympic athletes are now calling out the agency for failing to act. Former USA gymnastic team doctor Larry Nassar is now serving a 175-year sentence for sexually assaulting young athletes. Those young women say they reported the abuse to the FBI more than a year before agents acted. According to a federal investigation, Indianapolis field office special agent Jay Abbott and another agent neglected to interview accusers, limited follow-up, and lied to officials to minimize errors. Abbott reportedly even tried to get a job with the U.S. Olympic Committee. In that time, between July 2015 and September 2016, the Investigator General's office believes Nassar abused 70 athletes. In total, officials believe Nassar abused more than 300 athletes before he was brought to justice in 2016. Simone Biles and her fellow Olympians testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee on Wednesday, calling out the FBI for botching their investigation.
We suffered and continue to suffer because no one at FBI, USAG, or the USOPC did what was necessary to protect us. We have been failed, and we deserve answers. To be clear, I blame Larry Nassar, and I also blame an entire system that enabled and perpetrated his abuse.
USA Gymnastics, in concert with the FBI and the Olympic Committee, were working together to conceal that Larry Nassar was a predator. I then proceeded to tell them about London and how he'd signed me up last on his sheet so he could molest me for hours twice a day. I told them how he molested me right before I won my team gold medal. This was very clear, cookie-cutter pedophilia and abuse. And this is important because I told the FBI all of this, and they chose to falsify my report and to not only minimize my abuse, but silence me yet again.
Nassar found more than 100 new victims to molest. It was like serving innocent children up to a pedophile on a silver platter. Why would duly sworn federal law enforcement officers ignore reports of abuse by a doctor across state lines and country borders? For a future job opportunity? Or were there additional incentives and pressures?
Special Agent Abbott retired several years ago, and the FBI only fired the other agent, Michael Langman, 2 weeks ago. Several U.S. senators are now calling for a prosecution of those FBI agents.
If I were in your shoes, I would be walking across the street to the Attorney General of the United States, and I would be saying, you need to prosecute. Why aren't you doing that?
Well, I don't want to get into my discussions with the Attorney General. I have a lot of respect for him and for the privacy of our conversations. I will say that in this particular instance, the case agents responsible for the investigation, as is appropriate, were the Inspector General's office's agents.
Joining us today is criminal defense attorney Mike Correspondent and Terry Austin. Mike, the issues these women are testifying to seems systematic, both in the U.S. Olympic Committee and in the FBI. If we do see charges against FBI agents, what do you think those could be?
Well, there are federal charges that could be filed, as one of the young women testified to. She made reports and reported to FBI agents who falsified reports. Falsification of reports is a violation of federal crime, and I think that could be a very strong case based upon what this investigation shows as to those agents. This is scary, it's devastating, and quite frankly, the testimony of these young athletes was very, very moving and clear and very specific. I think they're on to opening a big probe into this case.
Absolutely. Terry, what do you think the future of the U.S. gymnastics are after this hearing? How does an Olympic organization stick the landing after failing these athletes so poorly?
It's going to be very difficult, Brian. I think the USA Olympics and the USA Gymnastics both need to take a look at what their policies are, what are their procedures, how are they treating the women and girls that they are working with, and are they taking their claims seriously? When we heard from Simone Biles and Michaela Maroney and Allie Raisman and Maggie Nichols today, they were very professional and they told their stories the way they should have, and they asked for some accountability. And I think we're going to have to see accountability with these two organizations the same way we have with the FBI.
Absolutely, especially before the next Olympics. This cannot continue for American women, girls, boys, and men. This has to stop now. Hopefully that will occur today and going forward. Thank you both. Tuesday marked the first full day of witness testimony in the federal case against former billionaire Elizabeth Holmes. Former Theranos employees and financial managers testified, revealing that at one point the company was losing $2 million a week, but were told the company would soon generate $1 billion per year. In its heyday, Holmes claimed the company would revolutionize blood testing, but later, investigations found many problems with the test. On Wednesday, witnesses explained it was common for Theranos proficiency tests to create mixed results and often failed tests. Holmes faces 12 fraud charges for her connection to the now defunct Theranos. We're now nearing the 1-month mark in the federal trial against R&B singer R. Kelly. After weeks of gripping testimony from sexual assault accusers, prosecutors are now asking that jurors hear profane video and audio recordings of the singer. The tapes, dating back to 2008, include audio of Kelly screaming at a woman for lying to him and then beginning to assault her. He can be heard saying, quote, "If you lie to me, I'm going to F you up." In another recording, Kelly can be heard threatening a separate woman, saying he will track her down in her home state and, quote, "something will happen to you." Among the underlying charges, Kelly faces federal pornography and obstruction, including enticing minors to engage in criminal sexual activity, intimidating victims, and concealing evidence. A missing woman's boyfriend now named a person of interest in the case as the search for 22-year-old Gabby Petito continues. In July, Petito and her boyfriend Brian Laundrie left for a cross-country road trip. They detailed their journey, taken in Petito's van, via social media posts.
Hello, and good morning.
But since August, Petito's social media has fallen silent. She was believed to be traveling near Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming when she was last seen. Days later, Laundrie returned to his family's home in Florida, driving Petito's van without her. On Tuesday, Laundrie's family released a statement saying in part, quote, "It is our hope that the search for Miss Petito is successful and that Miss Petito is reunited with her family." After that, Laundrie noted his legal counsel advised him to make no other comments. Petito's family fired back in a dueling statement saying, quote, "How does Brian stay in the background when he's the one person that knows where Gabby is located?" On Tuesday, Utah police confirmed they responded to an incident involving both Laundrie and Petito 2 weeks before she went missing. At the time, officials determined no criminal charges would be filed. Petito is described as being a white woman with blonde hair, 5 feet 5 inches tall, and about 110 pounds. Anyone with more information should contact Crime Stoppers. The number is at the bottom of your screen. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, the jury is now deliberating on the fate of real estate heir Robert Durst. We'll bring you up to speed on the case ahead of the verdict. But first, the Murdaugh murder mystery adds murder for hire. How South Carolina attorney Alex Murdaugh got caught up in a murder for hire plot.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law and Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law and Crime Network with YouTubeTV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTubeTV today and then locate Law and Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law and Crime every day with YouTubeTV. We put you in the jury box.
Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. The twisted web of the Murdaugh murder mystery just got even more entangled. As a South Carolina lawyer admits, he hired a hitman to kill him, all in the name of a $10 million insurance policy. Law and Crime Daily brought you the story last week. After Murdaugh claimed he was changing a flat tire when a bullet grazed his head, he survived the shooting. This comes months after Murdaugh's wife and adult son were found shot to death at their South Carolina home. Just 3 days later, Murdaugh's father died of cancer. All this, his lawyer says, caused him to spiral out of control and abuse opioids. After 20 years of addiction, Murdaugh began paying for the pills through misappropriated money from his law firm. Believing that his $10 million insurance policy had a suicide clause, Murdaugh hired 61-year-old Curtis Edward Smith to kill him at a phony traffic stop. On Tuesday, Murdaugh and his lawyers came forward with their scheme.
It was an attempt on his part to do something to protect his child. He didn't want law enforcement spending more time on this fake crime instead of focusing on solving the murders of Maggie and Paul.
In an exclusive interview with the Today Show, Murdaugh's attorney said the murder-for-hire plot had no connection with his wife and son's double murder, but instead was an act of desperation to protect his other son.
None whatsoever, except he was in a dark, dark, dark place and wanted to help his son in any way he could, the remaining son, Buster, in any way he could, and he thought this was the only way he could leave him with anything.
Let's bring back criminal defense attorney Mike Correspondent and co-host Terry Austin. Terry, I have the utmost sympathy for those who suffer from opioid addiction, but what could this murder for hire mean for Murdaugh?
You know what, Brian, I agree with you. I have sympathy for opioid. It's a huge, huge problem here in the United States, obviously, but it's a stretch of the imagination to think that Murdaugh's involvement with this murder for hire plot had anything to do with his drug use. If his wife and son were actually killed separate and apart, I can understand him beginning to get depressed, using opioids, but then for him to calculate a suicide plot where he's murdered so he can collect on the insurance, I think is truly a stretch, and he's not taking responsibility for his own actions, even though he's seemingly doing so.
I tend to agree with that, Terry. Mike, what about the guy Murdaugh hired, Curtis Edwards? Would you expect serious charges or even jail time for him?
I would expect serious charges, but I think this is one of those cases where the process has to play out. It's going to be very interesting as to what evidence this person can offer into the case, and we're going to find out, was it really a suicide plot? What exactly was it? There just seems to be so many unusual moving parts in this case. I don't really know, Brian, if it was a good idea for his counsel to go on TV this early to discuss the case when I think there is a lot of things that need to be uncovered here that they may not be aware of. Right now, I think for any defense attorney in this situation, it's best to sit back, listen, and see what develops.
I'm hoping for another twist next week. Maybe this guy flips on Murdaugh and we get a whole new twist and turn to this web, but we'll have to wait and see how that plays out, just as you said, Mike. Thank you both. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, a third-degree murder conviction overturned. More on what's next for former Minnesota police officer Mohammed Noor. Plus, a father now behind bars after murdering his 5-year-old son with autism. How long of a prison sentence he faces, set to face. The day that we have waited 4 months for has finally arrived. Deliberations are officially underway in California versus Robert Durst. Robert Durst is charged with the murder of his best friend, Susan Berman, who was found dead in her Benedict Canyon home in December 2000. The real estate heir claims that he discovered his best friend's body, got scared, and fled the scene, only sending what is now the infamous cadaver note to help authorities later discover Berman. Robert Durst is suspected of killing Berman because she allegedly had information about his missing wife, Kathy, another murder that Durst is accused of and yet remains uncharged for. Testimony lasted approximately 4 months, with Durst spending 3 weeks on the stand testifying in his own defense. The jury deliberated for 3 hours on Tuesday. After closing arguments concluded, deliberations resumed on Wednesday at 4:30 Eastern Time. Before the jury started their deliberation, John Lewin left them with this.
Doing it because she was a witness, because he didn't want to accept the consequences of his conduct. Make him accept the consequences. Go back there, ladies and gentlemen, and please do your job, do your duty. This is not a difficult case. This is not hard. It's overwhelming. Please go back there and make this man accept the consequences for murdering his best friend, Susan Berman.
Turning now to Ohio, where jurors got their first glimpse at police interrogation videos of an accused arsonist. Stanley Ford is charged with the murders of 9 of his neighbors by setting fires in their homes. One of the homes belonged to the Huggins and Boggs family, where 5 children and their parents died in the fire. If convicted, Ford could face the death penalty. Before both sides rested in court on Wednesday, the defendant's police interrogation video was played for the jury, and things got heated between the investigators and Ford.
I would have screamed. I wouldn't have did no shit like that. Yeah, my wife called 911 when y'all think I did it. Man, listen, man. I didn't do it, man. I didn't do it, man. So, I didn't do it. Did you see the fire? Johnny Bill, once again. Did you see the fire? Johnny Bill, once again. Did you see it? If I would have saw fire down there at that time, I would have screamed. I would have screamed and took my arm and told neighbors to fire down on somebody's door. I didn't see no damn fire down there.
Switching gears now to Tennessee, where a father is sentenced to prison after being convicted of murdering his son. A jury found Joseph Ray Daniels guilty of second-degree murder, aggravated child abuse, and evidence tampering in connection with the murders of his 5-year-old nonverbal autistic son, Baby Joe. Daniels called 911 to report that his son escaped their Tennessee home. 2 days later, he confessed to investigators that he brutally beat his son after he urinated on the floor. He went on to say that he dumped his body in a rural area. Though multiple searches have been conducted, the body has yet to be found. 3 months after his guilty conviction, the judge sentenced Daniels to 51 years in prison. Afterwards, he will be eligible for parole. Baby Joe's mother, Crystal Daniels, also faces aggravated child neglect charges, along with a slew of other charges in connection to the death of her child. The mother appeared briefly in court on Tuesday afternoon, where she pled not guilty to those charges. Her motions hearing is set for November 12th, with her trial set to begin in February of 2022. The trial date is now set for the ex-pharmaceutical executive Martin Shkreli, dubbed Pharma Bro by the media. Shkreli faces a civil suit as state and federal regulators work to ban him from the pharmaceutical industry altogether. The charges stem from his decision to skyrocket the price of Darafim, a life-saving drug he held a monopoly over. In the same way, Shkreli is accused of illegally boxing out competition to maintain Darafim's high price. Right now, Shkreli is serving a 7-year sentence for securities fraud and is set to be released in 2022. Shkreli's civil trial is set to begin in December of 2021. After nearly 2 decades of dead ends, DNA evidence helped solve the cold case death of a Florida teenager. Since 2002, 15-year-old Foray Carter's family has been left with questions. That's when she was found viciously stabbed to death in her home. On Tuesday, officers charged 56-year-old Joseph Pollard with first-degree homicide. Pollard's motive is still unknown, and so far he has denied all involvement in Carter's death. Back in 2004, Pollard was sentenced to life in prison on an unrelated incident stemming from charges of robbery and a deadly weapon burglary and attempted kidnapping. Carter would have turned 35 years old this month. When we come back, a Minnesota police officer's resentencing, why the third-degree murder charge no longer applies, and what this could mean for convicted murderer Derek Chauvin. Welcome back. In a startling turn of events, an ex-police officer's third-degree murder conviction is overturned by the Minnesota Supreme Court. Experts say this could pave the way for a similar appeal by Derek Chauvin. Mohammed Noor was charged with the 2017 death of Justine Damon Ruszczyk, who called 911 to report an assault in her neighborhood. In 2019, Noor was convicted with back-to-back charges of third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. Since then, he's been serving a 12-and-a-half-year sentence. On Wednesday, the state Supreme Court ruled that prosecutors did not prove Noor acted with a depraved mind without regard for human life, a stipulation that would be needed for a third-degree murder conviction. From here, Noor will be resentenced for his second-degree manslaughter conviction. Mike, how did the court come to reverse Noor's conviction, and do you agree?
I think in this situation I do, Brian, because it was very specific and it was an instantaneous type of action. And there was a lot more question there and a lot more reassurance that he was acting with police procedures based upon the facts as they were given in that decision.
Yeah, it seems like a mental state kind of argument. It's maybe more negligent, maybe more reckless, but that depraved mind indifference, that's a very different standard than I think what may have happened in this situation. And I tend to agree with you as well, Mike. I think that's a little different than what he was charged with. Terry, so what does this mean for Mohamed Noor and even Derek Chauvin's murder convictions?
Well, Noor was charged and convicted of both the third degree and second degree. If you take away the third degree murder charge, he still faces 4 years for the manslaughter charge. And so he could technically get out on release after 2/3 of that sentence. He'll be eligible. But as far as Chauvin is concerned, don't forget he was convicted of second degree murder. So he was committing murder while he was assaulting someone, and he basically has that higher charge, even if the third degree goes away. Frankly, I don't think the third degree will go away because I think it was clear he did act with a depraved mind. So I think that that's going to stick. And don't forget, he also has that manslaughter charge. So I think that that conviction will stand.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense if you take what Mike said about the mindset and the timing. Mohamed Noor, the incident or the crime happened just in a few moments. With Derek Chauvin, a much longer period of time, so probably won't affect him as much. Thank you both. And thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.